Greetings. We did it. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am a minute late. The YouTubes did not want to go live 1 minute ago for some reason, alas, but no problem. Welcome. Thank you for joining us again for another Free Life Family Economy webinar. It was a lot of fun to do the last one, and I hope we can really cover a lot of ground here for this one. I'm just going to make sure that everything is looking good. And that you're all able to comment. Good. It looks like we have 13, 16. Awesome. Some thumbs uppery happening. These are all positive signs. Okay. Well, last time we didn't really get to cover a few essential questions. And I wanted to start off just by going there. And of course, they are my very favorite questions. One of them was, how do you start off raising a couple pigs as a first-time consideration? And this one is a lot of fun because I happen to be writing a book on this precise topic right now. It's going to probably come out in actually about a little less than a year from right now wise. I am putting it together and writing a lot. This has been the summer of putting many words down on paper. And so I'm working on this book, and this is the thing I pretty much think about all the time because the book is on pigs. It's on how zealously and perfect pigs serve the domestic economy. Bacon is at the top of the list of things that do that. So if you want to get started off raising a couple pigs, your very first consideration, the one that people overlook, is what kind of pigs do you want to eat? What kind of pork do you want to eat? Because pigdom breaks down into two categories. And those two categories are defined by the yield of the pig. So there are muscly pigs that are lean and fast growing. And then there are lardy pigs that are quite fat. They are fat. They are corpulent. And they grow very slowly. And your consideration is not which pigs are small and easy to handle. That's a consideration, but it's a secondary one. Your consideration is what do you want to eat? Because even if all the other things line out, let's say you want a small pig that's manageable. Maybe you think that it's easier to harvest a small pig in your backyard rather than a big one. At the end of the day, the final cause, the telos of that pig, is going to result in epic amounts of fat if you choose a lard pig. And when you're standing in front of piles, mountains of back fat and little tiny chops, all of the advantages that you thought that pig had they might evaporate in that moment if you don't want the fat. So consider how you want to cook, because that is the final cause. If you want lard, if you want cured back fat, if you are dying to forever banish canola oil, hydrogenated vegetable oils, seed oils of every kind from your kitchen and replace them with salubrious, delicious bucket loads of lard, then you should raise lard pigs. And in that category, you would find American guinea hogs, coonies, Maishans, excuse me, Mangalitsa's. Large blacks are kind of a both and. They're kind of in the middle, along with old spots. But those are lard pig breeds, and they will grow slowly, and they will stay small. Grow slow, as in some of them, you're not going to harvest them until they're 18 months, 20 months, 24 months. There's a few breeds you might be able to harvest them at 14 months, right? But they're slow growers, and they are going to yield epic amounts of fat. epic. So if you're thinking, I really want spare ribs, I love spare ribs, I love pork chops, all of which are definitely lovable and delicious, you should probably go to the meat pig side of the spectrum. Just know if you get a meat pig, and that's pretty much all the other breeds, Yorkshire, Hampshire, Duroc, um, what's the Hereford, you know, uh, Poland, China, all those guys. Those are meat pigs. You're only going to have them for like 4 to 5 to 6 months before they are 300-pound animals that need to be harvested. If they're not harvested, they will continue to grow and get quite enormous, hippopotamian, and which is great. You'll just have a lot of work on harvest day, and they will give you more lean flesh in the yield. So that is the first thing to consider: what kind of pigs you want to raise. If you want lard, and chops are a secondary, and cured meat, go for the lard pigs. If you want fast growing, if you want pork chops and spare ribs and Boston butts and big lean hams, go for the meat pigs. Both are delicious and awesome. Both serve the home economy admirably. And then you might consider the space that you have, and as a secondary thing. I know it actually kind of sounds weird to call it secondary, but it kind of is. The primary is, what do you want to eat? Um, and then consider, what are you able to raise? And that is a space consideration, though not so much that you need vast tracts of land. You don't need, you can disassociate the pastured pig thing from your pig raising endeavors. Pigs by nature are not ruminants. They will eat grass under very strict management and the right breed. They will actually graze. But that is a highly refined system of husbandry to coax your kune pigs into grazing. And so I wouldn't worry about that so much. Just be confident that you can raise two pigs in a 16 by 16 foot square. And it's got to be two, because they need a buddy. Society is very important to pigs, to how much they eat and how quickly they grow. It's not just accidental. They do need a buddy. And you can raise them within 4 hog panels, which are 16 feet long. They're galvanized steel mesh that you can get from any farm store, and several T-posts. Put inside of this small piggery, this temple of benevolent confinement for your domestic swine, epic amounts of wood chips. All they need in there is deep bedding, so they're never sitting or standing in copious, unavoidable amounts of their own waste. And that is what deep bedding gives you. And deep bedding is 12 inches, 18 inches of wood chips, or old hay, or straw. But straw is really expensive unless you have some kind of, free source, liberal source of that. And that will not only keep your pigs happy for their, depending on what they are, 4-month grow out or 18-month grow out, but it will yield you lots of wonderful garden compost after you slaughter them. You can deposit bedding while you're raising them to keep them out of their pooling waste, and that will be good. Do that. And then you can scrape it out. Just make sure they have a wallow in the summer and some shade. So one corner of the sty, this is the sty pig, should have a way for them to cool down. And the way they cool down is in a wallow, which is literally a mud pool. And because they don't sweat, and they will absolutely need that if you live in a hot region and you're raising them through the summer. So that's the quick start guide to raising your backyard pigs. And I've had people do this in neighborhoods where they're not supposed to, and it's totally awesome. If your neighbors are nice, they'll bring all their food waste over and augment the feed of the pig. Just be generous at harvest time with bacon and chops. So that would be the quick start guide to raising pigs on a small scale. You can absolutely raise them on a larger scale, and meaning with more land, if you do have some land. And the place you put them when you have land is in the thicket, in the bramble, in the forest, in the understory. You can put them on your pasture, but unless you are prepared to spend many days and hours managing them and moving them on pasture, they're just going to turn it into a moonscape. They will turn it into pits. They will destroy it, and they will. When you finally slaughter them, it's just going to come back with a bunch of invasive broadleafs and sticky, bushy things. They tend to destroy pasture unless they are very closely managed. Whereas the pressure of the pig snout can help you clear land that you wish to turn into pasture. Put them in the bramble, in the thicket, the most dense understory, the draw, on your property. Put them there and fence them in with electric poly braid after you've taught them what electric fence means, which we can talk about if you want. And they will clear it. And then after you slaughter them, they have taken it well to becoming reclaimed by pasture. So that's a quick start guide, really quick. All right. Oh, this is awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for jumping in and joining us. The Village Barber would love to hear my thoughts, advice on being a neophyte homestead dairyman now that you've had some time with Georgie. Georgie is my cow. We're hope to add a dairy cow next year. Yeah, it's great. Okay, I'll tell you, Village Barber, what my takeaway is after having Georgie now for, yeah, I guess we're still quite new. 10 months. I think we're at 10 months with her. Um, yeah, yeah, about that. Here is my takeaway. The most important thing in a dairy cow, this is like not even an exception. This is such an absolute law, and it's so gratifying, is temperament. If she is a sweetheart, there can be a whole bunch of other problems, and they will be remediable. You can actually have a chance at solving them because she is a sweetheart. Meaning you're not walking on eggshells around her. You're not worried that, ooh, if I get up on her here and investigate, where she kind of injured herself, is she going to injure herself more by fleeing from you, by being uncertain and touchy and jumpy and all of these things. And Georgie is just an icon of sweetness. I cannot believe the depth of her domesticity. It's incredible. She is so domesticated. She makes dogs, canines, she makes them look wild by comparison. She is so passive, so calm, and totally docile. And that means whatever issue we have had, oh, the fence wasn't working. Oh, the sheep are jumping the fence. We need to take care of that. Whatever, oh, I didn't get, I'm just trying, we haven't had any problems, but, you know, or like, yeah, let's say another sketchy animal, like a sheep gets caught in the poly braid and starts running around and, tying everything up and making a big mess. Guess what your calm cow does? Nothing. She's fine. She doesn't care. Disasters do not phase her. Fireworks do not phase her. She is unflappable, as they say, and a very tractable, there it is, tractable beast, as John Seymour would say. So the sweetness, the temperament, I'm so glad that that was my primary selection criteria in getting the cow. And I've only been confirmed in that, in making that priority, that I would suffer a lot of other deficits there to get the sweetheart. That is key. And in my mind, what the sweetheart means is she also respects fencing. She, you can look at any animal, and I feel like they have, well, they do have this. They have an adrenal capacity for flip outage, right? That's the technical French word for this. Um, and I just think of like a tachometer that tracks RPMs on your motor. And a really high performance motor, you can go, it can be really humming. Your tachometer goes to several revolutions per minute, like an Indy car. And then, there's your dinky little 1956 for Chevy pickup truck. And it can only RPM so high. And that's what you want. There's literally a hard limit on the ability to flip out on animals that excel at domesticity. And these are things that are actually detectable in the physiology of the animal, but most importantly, with bovines at least, you got to visit them. You got to visit them before you pick one up. And just if you think about nothing else while you're shopping for a cow, pick the one that is so sweet. You can walk up to her, you can handle her udder, your kids can run around underneath her, the dog can run in barking at the cat, and she doesn't even flinch during milking. She never kicks, she never steps. She is just totally anyway. I know. I go on. But that to me is key. And that is, that is of the essence of what it is to be a domesticated animal is you get along with the human order of the farm. And Georgie does that par excellence. So all of that to say, that is very much at the top of my list still. And I'm so glad she's a sweetheart. We did the AI, which I probably wouldn't do again. I would like to get a bowl, but it was no problem because she's easy. I don't even have a stanchion, you guys. I don't even I don't have to like lock her in, hold her still, and she's like suspicious and none of that. I don't even have to tie her up, but I do more as a symbolic gesture. I can grab her with their halter and lead her into the milking parlor, loosely wrap it around a bar in the stall, and she just eats organic alfalfa while we milk her. And she's awesome. She comes to her name, you guys. I can call her because I move them once a day, but it happens at random times throughout the day. And when it's time to the move to the next paddock, after I've set it up and I open the connecting poly braid to join the paddocks, I just call her. I say, "Come on, Georgie," and she gets up and she lumbers over and she goes. She's the best. Anyway, too much. Spending too much time. We'll go for a while, guys. But I love the Georgie cow, and it's all about temperament. Number one. Um, Josie asks, what advice, tips, or resources would you recommend for someone like us to improve our butchering skills and make sure we're doing it right? Oh, such a good question. Here's how you know you're butchering properly. When you take a piece of meat, you don't even have to know what it's called, and you cook it, and then it tastes well. If it is delicious, that means you butchered properly. And this is not me dumbing down butchery for you and oversimplifying the matter. No, the final cause of all butchery, of all meat cuttery, is the family table, is the cooking. If it tastes good, you cut it well. That's what that means. So then you can focus on your cutting in minimizing waste. Don't create any trim. You really don't need to. And separate muscle groups that are tough, which get heavy use, lots of use, and muscle groups that are tender, which get little use, right? And the muscle groups that are tender on a four-legged beast, which is pretty much all the beasts that we eat, those muscles are going to be along the spine. So if you just think about separating those tough groups from tender groups on a quadruped without creating a bunch of extraneous flaps, gouges, and a pile of shredded fat and skin if it's a pig, and wasted trim. If you just do that, you will, and your knife is sharp, you will fall into traditional butchery automatically because that's what has always guided the cutting up of a pig or a cow or anything. You've got to make it fit your pot, your pan, and your oven. That's it. Your pot for braising, your pan for frying, your oven for roasting. Those are what you should be thinking about as you're cutting up your pig. And your pan is where you put the tender muscle that is used infrequently by the animal. So literally, if you're cutting up the loin, you want to make pan friable things or things that you can roast hot and fast in your oven because they don't need prolonged cooking to become meltingly tender. They're already tender because they're not used by the animal frequently. Similarly, the tough meat, Literally, the muscles that the animal uses every day to bear its weight and ambulate to propel itself across the pasture or through the forest. Those those groups are tough because they're used a lot. So you just need to make sure that you cut those to fit the pot so you can braise them. That's it. So, and this means that you can totally reject and liberate yourself from the tyranny of the poster in the butcher shop with all the denuded cylindrical cuts. Each one has, 15 names next to it because the names are not functional. They're just determined by marketing. And so they don't actually serve your kitchen. They don't actually serve cookery. So that really is the whole paradigm of butchery. That's it. Try not to create a ton of flaps, gouges, and trim. Separate tough muscle groups from tender muscle groups and make sure that they can fit your pot, your pan, and your oven. And so other than that's the philosophical basis of all butchery. If you aren't already become a Meatsmith member, you can go to our website and join. It's a archive that I have created and continue to add to of over 50 instructional films, including instructional films on butchery pertaining to all manner of livestock. We cover everything. I'm adding more beef there. We have beef on there right now, but I'm going to put more. Lots of pork, lots of lamb, rabbit, poultry is all on there. And then the other thing would be you should come to a class. Come to a Farmstead Meatsmith class. What's unique about our classes, we have a beef class coming up in October that you should check out. I think I'm the only one out there offering butchery classes who is crazy enough to just put very sharp knives in everybody's hands. And I've done it so many hundreds of times now that I'm only more confident that it's the way to go. So you actually do all the cutting. I don't. I'll shoot the animal and bleed it out. And then that's it. And then with a small group, we walk through it. And at the end of 2 or 3 days, depending on the class, you know how to do it because you've walked through it yourself and you have manual experience, not just trying to remember some demo that I did. So that's what I'd recommend. Those are my resources. Books, there's not a lot of great books out there. And again, your metric for am I butchering right? Am I doing it rightly? Is didn't create a lot of waste at all. Or if you did, you figured out a way to use it. That's what rillettes are for, by the way, and sausage. Sausage and rillettes are forgiveness in the butcher shop. An errant cut, a random flap, a few extra fatty trimmy bits you don't know what to do with, rillette pot, sausage, right? But the way you judge whether or not you're cutting rightly is, does it taste good after you cook it? That's how you know that you butchered properly. Everything else is unique, fun traditions, traditional names, or marketing, defining where to cut on your pig or your cow or what have you. Julie asked, how do I butcher beef without a walk-in freezer to hang the meat? Okay. And Brienne asked, is hanging beef even necessary? So how do I butcher beef without a walk-in freezer? So technically, this is a good thing to distinguish. It's not a freezer. It's just a refrigerator. So there's that. That's huge because that means you don't need, temperatures below freezing. It's just refrigerator temperatures. So 35 to 40, 41, even if it gets up in there. So that's what we're talking about for a walk-in. For it's a refrigerator, not a freezer. And how do you butcher beef without one? Okay, one option is if you live in the northern hemisphere, do it in the winter because again, we don't need freezing temperatures. You just need cool-ish, winterish temperatures, which is what everybody did before ubiquitous refrigeration. You slaughter everything after the Feast of St. Andrew, November 30th in the northern hemisphere when it is a refrigerator outside. Hang them in your barn. And try to keep critters off of them. And that's it. Or put everything up on the salt. So I would say that is the easiest way to do it. And then here's the thing. So This would hopefully capture a lot of this question. Is hanging beef even necessary? Was what Brienne asked. And here's the thing about hanging beef in particular, and I guess all carcasses. So you're dealing with a whole slab of meat, right? Bone in. With a cow, it's inevitably going to be quartered. With a pig, it's going to be split in half. In these cases, spoilage is obvious, okay? It announces itself. So we have a very heightened fear of food poisoning and putrefaction, mainly because we have generalized the worst kind of food poisoning to apply to all food poisoning. And it just doesn't. And that is botulism. So there is botulism. Botulism is a very singular, distinct thing. It is a toxin that is lethal in doses that you can't, in quantities that you can't taste, see, or smell. Now, the thing about that toxin is that's just one of them, right? That's one. There's a bajillion of them, but only one is like the botulinum toxin. And that toxin will not be released from a particular spore from the Clostridium botulinum bacteria if oxygen is present. Okay? So when you're thinking about what this means is when you're thinking about whole carcasses, a side of pork, quarter of beef, literally hanging it in December, off of from your porch or from the overhang in your barn, but it's nice and cool outside. If it goes bad, it is going to be flagrantly obvious, super, super obvious. You're never going to walk up to it and go, gee, I don't know if this beef is good anymore. No, no, no. You're going to know because botulism is not even a possibility in this case. The one thing that you can't see, taste, or detect with your senses, that one toxin, it's not even possible with your hanging quarter of beef. Why? Because there's oxygen everywhere. This is why you always err on the side of not wrapping things in plastic. Don't create an anaerobic or oxygen-free environment. Your oxygen is your hedge against and your decisive hedge. Like it does not allow botulism. That toxin cannot be released when there is oxygen. It's very fragile in that way. So when you're considering this, just know the rule for hanging animals without a walk-in is hang it as long as it looks good and smells good, and it'll be fine. Now, usually what this means is you're going to have to do some management. If you're just hanging in the winter, with a pig, you're starting because it will eventually go bad. It will eventually spoil. A walk-in that is low temperature, 35 degrees, maybe up to 40 as it goes through defrost cycles or whatever. That's fine. But also low humidity in the 60% humidity. And that very controlled, constant environment, your beef will hang pretty much indefinitely. Now, your winter environment under the eave of your barn is going to be a little more fluctuating. Oh, we're up in 50 today, and then it goes way down. And then, we're 17 degrees at night or something. And then it goes up. So it's a little more, it's a little less controlled. But your metric is still, how does it smell? If it doesn't stink, it's okay. But because you can't control the weather and you don't know what's coming the next day, it's a good idea to just start cutting into it and eating it. Just start cutting into it right away. If you're going to hang without one, unless you live in an amazing place where you have guaranteed low temperatures for a while and a very constant, controlled environment. All that to say, technically, it is not strictly necessary to hang your beef, but you're going to want to braise most of it because it is going to be tough and chewy if you don't. So that's what aging or hanging beef does. And it actually facilitates a benign decomposition, nay, a benevolent decomposition, a salutary decomposition. It breaks down without putrefying. It's just enzymes breaking down the meat, and it loses water weight, but actually becomes more juicy in the process. It's amazing. It's a miracle. And it's really nice to do that in a walk-in just because you know what tomorrow's temperature is going to be. whereas you don't with the winter. All that to say, strictly speaking, you can get away with not, you could cut up your beef the very next day after this slaughter. And you know what? It would still be pretty good. It would be quite tasty. If you were to fry up a ribeye, it would be chewy. Pretty much almost across the board with every breed, it would be a chewy ribeye. It'd be a little disappointing. But maybe you have space to take out the loin and the rib and let those age a little longer, because maybe those you can fit in your fridge. Just keep the bone on, everything on, keep it as big as possible and fit it in your fridge. But if you are going to be cutting things off without much age on them, then you're going to kind of limit yourself to a lot of ground beef and stew, braising, cooking low and slow in liquid to melt things into tender deliciousness. So I hope that is helpful. Okay, I got to keep going. Have any thoughts on the mini milk cows? Are there inherent problems that come from miniaturizing such an animal? So there are two categories of mini milk cows, and I have yet to really figure this out. There is the pet world, right? And those guys have not been selected for hardiness, for a big rumen that can handle a lot of, that does not require grain, right? In the pet world, they're just planning on feeding them. They're just going for cuteness, everything that is the opposite of what you want on a homestead. So those are the pet minis. And then there are more archaic minis, like I guess the Dexter would be an example, where they are the result of generations of special selection by, domestic artists of the homestead. And they are crafting a small cow that is manageable, because there is a thing that the smaller the animal, at least in the bovine world, the more efficient it is. And so that would be the essential distinction I would make. If you suspect that the minis are pets at all, forget about it. But if there is something there, if there's a tradition in that breed, like Herefords used to be small too, and I know they're a beef breed, but they used to be real short-legged. There's Aberdeen Angus, which is also a short cow. It's short, but it's boxy and it's deceivingly large. It's just there's not a bunch of wasted space beneath the belly and the grass where there is no meat. So I would say the minis are worth consideration if they come from the heredity of utility and pet, not the pet world. Catherine asks, the biggest hurdle with bigger animals is knowing the cuts and then having a proper saw to get through the bones when necessary. Okay. Here's the only 3 cuts you need to know. Okay, no, there's 2 of them. Tough, tender. That's it. On a carcass, you only need to know what is tough and tender. This cut is tough. This cut is tender. How do you know that? You know that by imagining the way a 4-legged beast moves about on the earth. Which muscles does it use with every movement? Generally, the closer you get to the hoof, the ground, the tougher the musculature gets, right? All the muscles on the 4 legs all get heavy use, all tough, okay? And then the muscles that serve as only a bridge between the hips and the shoulder, how often does a 4-legged beast use those? Never, unless they are, and I'm sorry, you've heard me say this joke so many times, but it bears repeating. Unless they're standing up and walking around on your farm because some of your pigs are more equal than other pigs, then those muscles are tender. It's only on bipeds, kangaroos, raccoons, bears, who sometimes go bipedal, where they're using the muscles along their spine. Whereas on a quadruped, they're just a bridge. They get little use, ergo, they are tender. And guess where all your chops, your filet mignon, your ribeyes, your New York strips come from? Your T-bones. It's all the tender and few muscles along the spine. Everything else is tough. And yes, you could, excavate a really fancy little muscle from the shoulder called the flat iron that is very, very tender, but it's a little guy. And it's like 4 steaks for 2.5 people. So I usually don't have time for that kind of thing. in a family such as mine. It's fun sometimes, but it's a luxury. It's a special item. Anyway, those are the only two cuts you need to know. Does it get heavy use? It's a tough cut. Does it get little use? It's a tender cut. So you could label your butchery packages in that way. You could say, you know, leg braise. And if it's a leg means heavy use, used a lot. Doesn't matter if you call it a beef shank or ossobuco. It came from the leg, heavy use. I need to braise it. I need to cook it low and slow with liquid. So that is still the paradigm. And butchering thousands of animals, that is my paradigm to this day. The specific names of the cuts, that's just fun, and those are little hints to traditional preparations and how various regions, have treated various cuts. At best, sometimes they're just marketing. So the biggest hurdle with bigger animals is knowing the cuts and then having a proper saw to get through the bones. So the proper saw, I don't even have a bandsaw, people. I don't have a bandsaw. I don't have a meat saw. I do everything with a manual handsaw and a cleaver and a sharp knife. And the manual handsaw is a bone saw. And you can do that really well. Just know that bone saw blades are replaceable. And usually people get a blade, get a bone saw, but they don't get a bundle of 12 replacement blades. And you just be prodigal in your use of replacement blades. And a beef will dull them quickly, especially a mature cow, because beef bones come from mature animals. They are therefore dense, and they dull the saws pretty quickly. So the moment you feel like you're not getting efficient sawing motion, replace the blade. And yeah, get a nice one. Get a nice one. Don't settle for like the pack of butchery. What am I trying to say? Like the hunter's kit that comes in like a toolbox, and it supposedly has everything. It's got a gut hook and a skinning knife and a little bone saw that's this big. Don't get that. You can go to my website, farmsteadmeatsmith.com, get the tools list, and I have sources for all the basic tools that you can use to equip your homestead with all the butchery tools you need. And they are not complicated. The most complicated thing is going to be your meat grinder, and as far as equipment. But you don't need chambered vacuum sealers. You don't need a bandsaw. You don't need a lot of very complicated equipment. But get a good one, bunzelpd.com. And that'll probably redirect you to Koch Supply. Their their white-handled bone saw is actually a good one. It's a little more expensive, but you'll only have it forever. And you pass it on to your grandchildren, and it will always have replaceable blades. Okay. Thomas Duffy, welcome. Good to see you. Ellen, Jamie. Okay, good. Got a lot of people in there. This is great. I got to keep moving. But let's see. Daniel asks, I would love to hear you speak on the economics of having a cow-calf pair on a small land mass. I have a little over an acre. I would need to buy in hay and sustain a dairy cow. That is a great question. And I think here is the equation you would make for that. Because you can raise pigs there too, right? We just went through the benevolent confinement thing. You don't need a ton of land for pigs. And you're definitely going to have your laying flock with eggs. And you're definitely going to have your children, your family that you need to feed good things to. Now, if you have, the way to think about it is you're buying in all the feed for the cow, right? Because you don't have enough pasture. So you just want to be able to keep her in a spot where that can be kept clean. And you could absolutely still rotate her around what little bits you have. Even if you have a small paddock, like it's still cut it up and move her from spot to spot. Just to give even the little bit of land that you have a rest. But the way you think about it is, instead of buying a feed for each individual animal and for your family, you are buying hay, right? That would be the equation. So if I were in your position, I would think, am I in a place where I can get good hay? because the hay is going to be the basis of your entire domestic economy. It's going to feed everybody. You're buying hay to feed the pigs, the chickens, the dairy goat, or whatever else you have, and your children. Hay is feeding the farm, not because you're feeding hay to your children, your pig, and your chickens, but you're feeding the hay to the cow and the calf, and the cow is giving you the feed for your pigs and your chickens and your family. So if I were in your position, my whole assessment of that situation would be, can I get good hay? And I would think I would have two considerations. The good stuff, can I get the good stuff? Is it available? Because it's going to be the basis of your family's diet and the diet of your pigs and everybody else. You're all eating hay. I would try to ensure that it's not sprayed and it's good stuff. So that would be an important consideration for me, just because it is the ubiquitous elemental feed for everything on the farm. So if that is good, if that is of high quality, if it is clean, that would be better. Uh, if not, everything is compromised, right? Everything. So I would try to be sure that I can get quality hay, and then that I can afford it. And the way you know you can afford it is if you are offsetting it by the cost by not buying all the other feeds. So that's the way this works. You only raise as many pigs as you can feed on dairy waste and even hay. Like you can't actually feed. So if you get like Maishons or get a lard pig, for example, they are so much more efficient as far as their caloric demand. You can just feed them basically milk and hay, and they'll do pretty darn good. These lard pigs, right? They will indeed thrive upon that. Whereas if you get a couple Yorkshires, they're growing fast. They need a huge injection of very rich, high protein, high carb feed to keep up with their metabolism, or they will starve. Maybe don't raise those. And so that is how your hay bill will feed everybody else. Is you're not buying a full spectrum, very expensive organic hog mash for your pigs. You're buying maybe nothing for your pigs, but hay for the cow, milk goes to pigs, and also hay goes to pigs. And you can feed clabbered milk to chickens; they'll mop it up. And the resource for this, for maximizing the dairy yield of your sweet dairy cow, is going to be the Dohertys. So look at Sean and Beth Doherty, get their book, The Independent Farmstead. Um, they start from a slightly different basis. They might tell you, if you can't grow feed for your cow, don't raise a cow. I don't know. They might not say that. They love cows so much that they might still recommend that you raise one, because that means, instead of buying organic pig feed, instead of buying an organic laying hen feed, which is super expensive, those are your high costs. You're just buying good hay. And then the cow's feeding everybody. And all that means is you need a good producer, a good, healthy producing cow. So 5 gallons a day, type of thing, I would think, for a family and to feed livestock and everything else. You want milk in excess for that situation to really work for you. Yes. So that's what I would say, Daniel. Yeah, that's what I would do. In my case, I cannot get in my region hay that is of quality unless I go all the way to organic. Everything is sprayed here. Everything. And I do. So I get huge 800-pound bales of alfalfa for about $208. And it's organic. And that is a very rich hay. It's super good. It's nice stuff. The cow, Georgie, loves it. And it's worth it, because her nutriment that she provides for us in her milk, for the pigs, for everybody, it's the basis. It's the basis of everything. And if that's compromised, then you're gonna find other problems down the food chain of the farm, because everything is surviving off of her and thriving indeed off of her milk. So that's how I think about that, Daniel. I hope that's helpful. Matt asks, where do I source low cost beeves? That is a cow of the smallest sort. Finding small, gentle quadruped ruminants can get costly with the boutique breeds. Yes, yes, it can. That is a good question. I would avoid auctions. That's always, you never know. Uh, with the exception of developing your stockman's eye. So, I mean, a cow is they pretty much don't put on airs generally. They don't try to influence people. They pretty much are who they are all the time. And so if at the stock show, you could still select or at the auctions, you could still go for cows that are just super docile. And here's what a non-docile cow looks like, a non-sweet cow. Head up and looking around all the time and suspicious and jumpy. That is not a calm cow at all. But if their head is immediately down, that's the cow you want. So head position, honestly, is pretty big. You want a calm cow with their head down. Um, and then, I would look at the yeah, local dairies are a source. Generally, if they're jerseys, Jersey bull calves are constantly available, but they're also notoriously malevolent and not fun to have around, which is weird because the cows are so sweet. But I've seen Holstein steers are actually quite sweet. And their flavor is delicious. They're just pretty darn bony, but lots of bone stock. And still, if you feed them well, you have a good cow. Um, I'm sorry, I lost track. I want to find your question here. Yeah, finding small, gentle quadruped ruminants can get costly with the boutique breeds. Yeah, and that's why it just takes research and the places where you can get unwanted cows are going to be dairies, right? That's where they're going to be the cheapest and the most readily available. And I would honestly visit the cows before you buy as a general rule. And one other thing that you can note is flight distance. Okay. And if you have a small homestead, the cow don't even want to touch with a 10-yard pole is the one that you can't touch with a 10-yard pole. So if you get close to the cow and it just keeps getting further from you, and it with each step you take closer, it increases the distance betwixt you and it. Don't even consider that cow. You don't want that. You want cows that are not terrified of human proximity, and you want to be able to be close to them. Ask about fence jumping amongst the herd that you might be sourcing cows from, because these are all things: huge flight distance, the jumping of fence saws, and a head up, constant alert, looking around cow. Those are deal killers. Don't do that. But if you can get close to them, and they tend to literally have their head down, and that means they're in forage mode. They're unfazed by what's going on around them. That's the cow you want. Um, as a resource, it's actually not a very useful resource because none of his stuff is edited well and it's almost impossible to search. But Gerald Fry, he resuscitated this old knowledge of being able to look at the exterior shape and the ratios of the cow's physical size to itself, like literally, the top line compared to the circumference of the chest and such things. And you can actually reliably determine temperament by looking at the outside of the cow when you know how to do it. The guy that carries that on these days is Stephen Campbell. I think he's in Idaho. And those would be resources for discerning a calm cow. Among these things is a very masculine appearance in the bulls and a very feminine appearance in the cows. That actually translates to good temperament, especially with the bulls. Higher testosterone, oddly, means a calmer male bovine. And Literally, masculine is what you think. Very broad in the shoulder, very deep in the shoulder, short neck, and not so wide in the hip, even. Whereas on the heifers, on the cows, it's the exact opposite. Very broad hips and more, tapered down to shoulder. Not excessively, I know, but feminine appearance. So those are some resources I would look at there. And don't get horns, if you can imagine it. Manage it. That way, if you misjudge, you don't have the horns adding an extra threat to, because those cows will be the cheapest, by the way, the horned cattle at the auction. But I would just completely avoid them. What are my opinions of unwanted dairy bull calf Holsteins get large jerseys? Do you venture into tanning hides? Those cows are delicious. Okay. Unwanted bulls or steers of dairies, Jersey, Holstein, Ayrshire, what other breeds are out there? It's really the Holsteins dominate. But the flavor is out of this world. So that's the objective reality. They're awesome. They're great. And they're either cheap or free. So that would be a very good way to go. They're just bony. They're not bred to put on meat. They're bred to have daughters that produce lots of milk. So a different focus for their nutriment, but they are absolutely delicious. So, and by that I mean, like, you will be surprised. The flavor is amazing. Some of the best, and also you can get old cows. This is another consideration going back up to, uh, yeah, Matt. Old cows. Old cows are good cows. They are delicious. They're absolutely delicious. Now, the challenge with old cows is they can be huge if they're allowed to linger like a steer, especially if he just hangs around for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. He's going to be a monster, but he's going to be so delicious. The flavor of old cows is out of this world. It is so good. Also, doesn't mean that they're crazy tough. That is a function of physiology as much, if not more so, than age. So the function of the muscle is what makes it tough. And that's the same on a young cow versus an old cow. They both use the same muscles, right? So an old cow, the ribeyes will still be pan friable, and they will be way more marbled than a young cow and just crazy delicious. So old cows are a source of great flavor. Incredible. Some of the best flavored beef I've ever had was a 12-year-old Jersey cow. Still remember it to this day. Mind blowing. And that was 16 years ago. Very good. I don't venture into tanning hides. I have to pick battles, and I haven't done that. I say it with a bit of shame, but we can't do all the things. It is worthwhile, though. How is my dog part of the economy? Oh, Tuck. We do have a canine. He doesn't contribute very much. No, he does. You know what he does? He is actually, so he's a shepherding dog, right? He's not a livestock guard dog. He lives in our house and outside. He sleeps in the house in a crate. Um, his the thing that he does well is he keeps predators off the land, even though he doesn't sleep out there all night. We still have to put all the poultry in every night, but his contribution is he barks it up every night. And then he barks it up every morning when I let him out at around 5 a.m. in the morning. And I really think that is the cause of our almost zero poultry loss to predation for, I don't know, since we've had him, really, for the past year or so. He's gonna be 3, I think. Yeah. But so that's how he contributes. Other than that, the canine is a crime of passion. Other than that, they promise lots of efficiency, especially if you get a breed that is designed for a specific purpose. But that you have to unlock that by training them, and you probably don't have time for that. I know I don't. So all of that to say, I do appreciate Tuck in that he has protected our land from predation. And I am also happy that he is a hyper intelligent dog. He's really smart. So I didn't have to, he learns things quickly. That's what that means. Whereas the livestock guard dogs, they're kind of independent. They're not very interested in learning things, especially fence lines. And that's because I've owned both, and that's a greater challenge. That's more to deal with in our modern context with fences. Livestock guard dogs are not. They were not created for fenced agriculture. For fenced, they were created for infinite horizons of ranges to protect flocks within. So fences almost don't work with livestock guard dogs. With a few, the exceptions are rare and they're treasurable. They're awesome. Keep them when you have a dog that stays in. But a whole nother category of dog that does stay in are the shepherding dogs. And that's because they're obsessed with the people. So Tuck is the dog that stares at me all day and just wants me to love him more than I am capable. And that's okay because it keeps him around, and he does keep the predators away. And also essential to canine economy, do not buy dog food. Just that. I would not own a dog if I had to buy kibble. Absolutely not. Because there's many things that come with kibble. One, the dog stinks. The other thing, he gets sick all the time. You have to bathe him, you have to brush his teeth because kibble is garbage. It is junk food. A dog is not human. It does not need hygienic maintenance when it is fed what it is designed by nature to consume, which is raw flesh. So Tuck only eats raw meat, and we give it to him every day, but he chooses to fast sometimes, so he doesn't always. And I do not have time to do the hygiene thing with the canine. None of us do, and we don't have to. So I've never washed him except for once. He got sprayed in the face by a skunk, and it was intolerable. So I do not bathe him ever. We just brush him once a day. That's one of the kids' chores. Zero health problems. I do not brush his teeth ever, and I will never ever brush a dog's teeth. And his breath doesn't stink, and his coat doesn't have that little film thing on it, all because he only eats raw meat. So he is insanely healthy. He's ridiculously healthy. He gets ticks. We pull him off. He's okay. He's I don't put tick spray on him. I don't do any chemical stuff. The only way it works such that he is not a burden to the family economy is when I make his nutriment, the essence of his being, of which it is composed, good raw meat. And that's the whole secret to the paradigm. So that would not work if we didn't do that. Oh, good. Ellen is here. Awesome. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, make sure I'm not just way behind here. Okay. I think we're doing okay. All right. I'm going to keep plowing through. These are great. Thank you so much, everybody, for these comments. It's so fun. I hope you're finding the verbiage coming out of my mouth helpful here. Let's see. Yeah, unwanted dairy bulls are delicious. Dog economy. Terry asks, why are professional meat butchers so famously ornery? Good question. The reason is that they butchery. Okay, for those who might want to get into custom slaughter and butchery, technically speaking, considered as a service that you are providing, it is objectively toilsome. So there's that. It's like roofers. Like, you ask a guy that does comp roofing, do you like roofing? Like, yeah, I'm so passionate about it. It's like, no, of course not. It's miserable. Hot roofs, calloused knuckles from building up all the extra skin on his knuckles from laying down comp. And once you've done it, 800 times, it starts to lose, its magic. The butchery slaughter can be the same thing. And especially in the case of butchers. So that's one thing. It is just hard work. And it's bloody, it's wet, it's messy, it's heavy, it's slippery. And the setup and cleanup is immense. That's most of the job. And usually your customers are ignorant and annoyed at you. And that is the fault of the butcher also. But that's one of the reasons. Also, they don't charge enough. So this is the pandemic. As much of a plague as not having enough butchers is It is just as much a plague that they do not charge enough. That's why there's not enough. There's still, some of them inherited their shops or they built their shops literally in 1985 and they're still in the same building. Everything is paid off, but they're still charging the same price to process the animals that they charged in 1992. And I am not exaggerating. That is insane. That is why they're miserable. They pay their employees more, their 1.5 employees that they can't keep, that don't stay because working conditions are miserable. They pay them more than they themselves bring home. And these are the rules of custom slaughter locally. They do not charge enough. Therefore, and they work all the time to for people that don't know what they want or what it is possible to derive from the animals that they have slaughtered. And so they are miserable. They all need to quadruple their prices at least, and then start doing a good job, and educating their customers, their clientele. Also, they have to dispose of most of the carcass, and I know we tend to blame butchers for this, because if you come to our class, we'll teach you how to do it with 100% yield. So when you hang the skinless, gutless carcass of your animal, that when you learn how to butcher our way, all of that is yield. None of it is trim. If you go anywhere else, the standard operating procedure is to take that weight and dispose of half of it is gone. It's trash. It's sent to a giant dumpster behind the butcher shop where a service is paid, or sometimes that waste is sold to the service to pick it up and take it to a rendering plant for cosmetics and dog toys. And that is going to be all your bones and all your fat from your carcass. So your yield is going to be about 50%, maybe, on your hanging weight. And hanging weight is 50% of live weight on the live animal. So the waste is just extravagant. But here's the thing, they do that because nobody wants fat and nobody wants bone on their animals. And so they have to pay a service, or at least arrange for a service to pick up all of that stuff and deal with it. So they are knackers. They are disposers of animal waste as much as they are butchers. And that's just a battle I have never picked because I give 100% hanging weight back to the customer, which means it takes me more time and I'm wrapping more, but so I must charge more. And that means I have to educate my customers as to why. So anyway, way too long of an answer, but it's a horribly mismanaged industry. No one is charging enough at all. It's not even close to a living wage. It's ridiculous. Like I say, 4 times. They need to 4x their prices. Why did I choose outside of Tulsa as our farm location? What's your microclimate like? Okay, we live in green country. We just got a ton of rain, like 2 inches at the end of August. Can you believe this? It's incredible. So our climate is stupidly fertile. We get 40 inches of annual precipitation a year. It's awesome. It's called green country for a reason. And we are in the Northeast. Yeah, as you know, Tulsa, northeast of Oklahoma. We're right next to the Arkansas River, and it is fertile, and it actually has topography. We have nice big oak, ash, and pecan trees, and we are in the cross timber, which is what it sounds like. It's a cross between oak dominant forests and prairie. So we have good grass. It's pretty awesome. It's a neat spot. I really love it. We chose it because there were very few places in the continental US where we could get land. We have 10 acres, and that is plenty. Let me tell you, we do not need any more than that. I'm actually very glad I don't have more than that. We have 10 acres and be close to a good Catholic parish because we like to go to mass throughout the week if we can. And the key to that equation is to be in a sub 15-minute commute to mass. And when you narrow those two things down, land that is close to a good Orthodox traditional parish, Catholic parish, there's pretty much 3 places in the entire continental United States. And then you limit it down to what we can't afford, pretty much Oklahoma. That was it. And so, I had met a few people out here. So, and got introduced to the community, and That made it easy. That made it, and then the availability of this property. It checked all the boxes. We have a shop, so we can host you for classes here. I have now I have fiber internet, so I can actually rightly stream and host the Meatsmith membership online. So there's those things. Um, Tell us more about, Dave asks, harvesting the intestines for sausages and such. Good resources for strategies to learn at home. So the best resource to learn at home is to come to a Meatsmith class unequivocally, especially if you want to learn how to harvest intestines. Because I'll describe it to you verbally now, but you just got to do it. And once you do it, you're like, oh yeah, I get this. It's like riding a bike. You're never going to forget it. The Meatsmith class to attend for that would be the Pig Slaughter 2, the Family Pig 2 class, which we have in December, where we clean not only the small but the large intestines. We turn the small intestines into sausage casings. We turn the large intestines into chitlins that are very delicious. Also, the Meatsmith membership you should check out, because I have at least written guides there, and then we address it too in the forums, how to clean those intestines and turn them into casings. So what you do is you get the guts out of your pig, and you find the small intestine, which is very obvious relative to the large one, and you have to pull it out of the mesentery in which it is sheathed. It's inside a fatty sheath, and you got to poke your finger through the fatty sheath and pull up, and inevitably you will be pulling up on a loop of small intestine that is coming out of the fatty sheath of the mesentery, for lack of a technically accurate word. And then you just keep doing this until you get to the end or you get bored, whichever comes first, because there's a lot of length there. And then you need a nice flat stainless steel table, or just a very flat, homogeneous, not pitted surface, and a bench knife, or a dough spatula that bakers use. And you keep the intestines wet, so put them in a bowl. And what you have to remove is the pink mucosal inner lining. That's what makes them opaque. Just the act of pulling them out of the mesentery will empty them of partially digested pig food, right? The chyme, that'll be removed at the first step. And what remains is you'll hold up the intestine. You can't see through it. That's because it's got a pink mucosal inner lining, which is made of fat, basically. And for sausage casings, you got to remove that. And you've done that when you can hold up the casing again and it's transparent. You can see your finger through it. And the way you remove it is you don't turn it inside out. Put all those casings in a bowl of water, pull out one end, put it on the table, and you scrape it with the bench knife. And just that pressure, you're kind of extruding it, if that makes sense. It's like wringing out clothes, an old clothes wringer. Anyway, that's what you're doing. You're holding it down and then you're extruding, and you'll see it. It'll shrink in circumference a lot, and then you push out the pink fatty substance that's from inside the intestine, and then just keep going until you get through all of it. And then you take those clean intestines, put them in a baggie with a handful of salt, and shake it up and refrigerate it, and they keep indefinitely, forever, in your fridge until you pull one out, rinse the salt off of it by running the faucet through it, and put sausage into it. But that's how you do it. The large intestine is slightly more involved, but no, it's just as simple. With that one, you basically have to peel the inner lining of the large intestine out of its more fatty mesentery. And we do that for flavor reasons as much as anything else. Oh, Ellen, welcome. I know you've been here for a while. It's great to see you there. Jamie is a member of the Meatsmith table and the Meatsmith membership. She has Idaho Pasture Pigs. What do I think of those? Yes, I have raised them. They're great. Idaho Pasture Pigs are awesome. They are such a new breed. I think what is it? Berkshire, Cooney, and Duroc, maybe, or something. They're new. They haven't been around very long, which means that they're not very typey yet. So in one litter, you will have IPPs that look like Berkshire and some that look a whole lot like Coonies. And then you'll have a few that are like the perfect halfway, midway. It'll look like it has more of a meat pig body with the squished upturned kuni nose. And that's more what they're going for. It's all about head shape. All of that to say, they are great. They're delicious, as all pigs are. They're just kind of you don't know what you're going to get because, like I say, from one pig you'll have one litter. You'll have pigs that are more lard piggy and pigs that are more Berkshire, all in the same litter. And then pigs that are the perfect little IPP type. And so, just as successive generations continue and they keep selecting, that will get more reliable. And and then they will be, because their ideal is to have a faster growing, leaner grazing pig. So they're trying to extract the grazing ability of the kuni and put it on a faster growing, leaner body. And that is possible. Um, and I think it's just a matter of time. So they're great. I've raised them. They're just not they're not always typey. They don't pass on the perfect IPP characteristics every time. Andrew asks, at the recent county fair, your son said he saw a 1,200-pound cow sell for $300, likely a retired dairy cow. Discussion on the best ways to utilize such a cow and how to manage it between uh, something and slaughter, i.e., how to keep it to minimize stress, how to determine when its body conformation is right to slaughter. Also, a discussion on dry aging and optimal temperatures, humidity, duration, which cuts to take first and last. Okay. Yeah, I would do it. I mean, that is pretty awesome because you can be pretty darn sure if that's a retired dairy cow, your step number one is a given. She's a sweetheart. So, not going to be a hard keeper. And then I would just fatten her up. She's always going to have, hip bones. You're always going to see some skeleton on her, right? And my metric is it's from cow to cow, even from dairy cow to dairy cow. You just want to start seeing a little bit less rib up towards the shoulder blade and a little bit less shoulder blade. When that is starting to get smooth, and you can't see literally every joint and every contour of her shoulder blade and her fore ribs just behind the shoulder blade through her very thin hide, then you know she's starting to put it on a little bit. And especially if she's dried off, that should happen. You probably have to keep her on some rich, good hay, alfalfa. I might even reach for alfalfa to fatten her up. But yeah, so the best way to utilize her is to slaughter her, to keep her for a little while until she gets that. And that condition can improve very quickly, actually, if you can get her on good grass or good alfalfa. It could just be like a month, and she's a little thicker. She's got a little less definition under her hide on the shoulder end of things. And you want to slaughter her on the gain. So while she's ideally, that's what they say, while she's still filling out a little bit. And then for this, it would be really nice to have your own walk-in, Andrew. I don't know if you've built yours yet. I know you raise sheep, but you probably haven't yet. But I know you're in the Pacific Northwest, where it is conveniently cool for a substantial chunk of the year, but not that cool. And that's when, especially with these older cows, hanging does benefit a lot. It does benefit a lot. So if you can hang her in a walk-in and you can you build it yourself, 4-inch insulated walls. You just need something stout structurally to be able to hang 100-pound quarter of beef from, for those. She might weigh a little more than that too, but probably not. And then that way she can age for about 3 to 4 weeks. If she's lean, just let her age for 3 weeks. If she's really lean, meaning she doesn't have a sheet of fat covering just under her hide. If she's lean, she'll dry up pretty darn quick. That's what a fat cow. That's why a fatter steer is really good for dry aging for basically indefinitely, because the carcass isn't going to get excessively dry. But even if it does get dry in prolonged hanging, it's still fine. You can add the pellicalized dry skin to the ground meat. It actually doesn't taste bad. It's delicious. It just doesn't get brown and crispy when you roast it hot and fast or pan-fried hot and fast. It gets leathery and drier. Whereas on a braise, that leathery, dried out, pellicalized, lean skin on the outside of a hanging carcass rehydrates and gets delicious and tender again. So it's no problem with braise. That's how you deal with the dried skin. Um, yeah, if she is a dairy cow, I don't think she's going to be that stressed at all. Like, she might show up at your farm. If she ambles off of that trailer and like her head goes right down, or oh yeah, or she interacts with the other cow. So here's I would cows are social animals, like they all are. And dairy cows are kind of an exception because they're usually bottle raised. They haven't really fixed onto the herd as much as they has fixed onto the milker, to the human, to the dairyman. So they're usually fine on their own. If there is a cow that is fine by itself, it's a dairy cow. It's a retired dairy cow. That just dramatically reduces your chances that you will get a cow that does not recognize your pasture as pasture, meaning their fences make no sense to you. So this can happen when you drop off a lone cow. If you get a cow at an auction or somewhere else and you bring it to a pasture, even if it's well fenced, but there's not another cow in that pasture. And that can be a problem, to where that cow doesn't have a herd, it's on its own, which is an unnatural state for a bovine, right? And so they could just start clearing fences. But like I say, that likelihood is much less with a dairy cow. So I would look for the dairy cows. And yeah, so body conformation is right to slaughter. Yeah, that's like I say, with the dairy cow Holstein, you're not going to get very much more than try to smooth out that shoulder region and the front ribs. If you could manage to not see all the ribs all the way up to the shoulder blade, that would be nice. You can't hope for too much with an old dairy cow, but like I say, she will be delicious. And then, yeah, dry aging, humidity. I kind of mentioned that earlier too, I think. But refrigerator temperatures, we're talking, and the humidity in the 60s%, and relative humidity, right? If it gets up to 72 percent humidity, that should be okay. It's no problem. When you get closer to 70, you will get more molds, but they're just going to be the penicillium. They're going to be the cheese-like molds. No problem there as well. And so that's the humidity range. If it's much drier than that, then you will get a very thick pellicle pretty darn quick. And we've already kind of, you know how to deal with the pellicle. So that would be the range that I shoot for. And honestly, in your region, Andrew, actually, conventional refrigeration is going to land right in about that pocket. That's where most basic refrigeration lands, given sufficient insulation. That's what I have found with conventional refrigeration or using the window-mounted AC CoolBot, because those function by pulling out warm air, which carries more moisture. That's how refrigeration doth chill. And then pushing in cool air that is drier. So it tends to keep the humidity quite low, so you don't need a specialized chamber for dry aging. You just need a refrigerator. I hope that's helpful, Andrew. Oh, yes. Which cuts to take first? So the cuts that are most likely to dry out. So the first cuts or to harbor moisture. So if you're aging a carcass indefinitely, now this is what we do in my family. When I slaughter a beef for my family and it's hanging in my walk-in, which you should all have right off your kitchen, we never freeze any of it. It hangs in the walk-in until we eat it. And sometimes it's 150 days before we get to the last cut. In fact, we might even wait for a very special occasion to harvest that last cut out of the walk-in. But we do harvest it in a particular order. We get the cuts in a particular order. So you want to do the flank first. Within the 3-week mark, harvest the flank, which is the big belly, the flap that curls around where the kidney would be, right? And where the fillet is. It's connected. It's the belly. It's the stretchy part. Harvest that, because that is also kind of folding around and is trapping moisture in the hind quarter, where you start to get some pretty extravagant mold growths, and you may get some surface level bacteria that could lead to spoilage. So you want to get that off probably before the 3-week mark. The skirt steaks, I take those off like within a week because they get dry. They're so thin, they dry out real fast within a week of hanging. So first, skirts, hangers within about a week. They don't need prolonged aging anyway because you're going to peel the fascia that's on them that would otherwise be tendered by hanging. You peel it. And then the flank, and then I hang from the pelvic bone so that I can harvest the shanks by week 4. Because those are super lean and they will dry, but they are also a braise, right? Because they're super tough. Crosscut beef, shank or shin of beef. So if you want like perfect, well, no, it's not. It's still perfect. Anyway, I try to harvest those at about 4 weeks, but because they're braised, if you forget about it and they stay on there for 8 weeks, it's still not a problem because you're going to braise it. So the pellicle that forms on the shank will re-moisten and be delicious through the braise. Petra asks, you have milk cows, hence beef and wild meat only. The husband does not want pigs. We do our own butchering and we are quite happy with results, but I still feel we have too much fat and tallow left over that we might make better use of. I'd like to learn more about that for sausage making, curing fatty cuts of beef, good good bacon alternatives, and general suggestions for curing beef cuts. We make a lot of hamburger, but there must be other options too. There are so many options. Okay, so to try to give you a quick little rundown, beef fat. Beef fat is so good. It is so wonderful. So it's helpful to distinguish between the two kinds of beef fat that you're going to get on the carcass, right? You're probably definitely talking about the suet, which is the internal body fat that surrounds the kidney. So if you grind that and you render it, what did you say? You're doing tallow, right? Yeah. So you're already doing tallow, which is the rendered suet that keeps indefinitely. So that's kind of an easy way to keep the fat just because it doesn't spoil if you render it properly. It just lasts. And so if you're rendering it properly, that means you're grinding it, or you could hand dice it. You could get away with that. Grinding it increases the yield. And then you render it in a pot with the lid off so that moisture can escape. That's the whole point of rendering. It's melting the fat, but it's also, if it's bubbling at all, that means moisture is escaping, and moisture is where spoilage happens. If you're trapping moisture in the lard or in the tallow, it'll start to host bacteria because all bacteria needs water. But if you keep the lid off, all of the very small amount of water that is in tallow or in suet will evaporate and be gone. So that will prolong the life of the tallow very much more. And then you have a lot more deep frying fat and stuff. And use it as shortening, right? So there's no reason not to use your tallow like you would use pork lard or vegetable shortening, which I do not recommend at all. But pie crusts, make more meat pies, right? And use tallow as shortening in the crust. Replace the butter, right? Completely with tallow. Or do 50-50, which is also kind of nice. You can also use the suet simply ground in a lot of applications, a lot of them. Oh man, there's too many options coming. I gotta start sorting in my head. It's gonna be a Gordian knot of fat utilization. Grind the suet. You can use simply ground, like, because when you grind suet after it's chilled in a fridge, it is crumbly, right? It's not like pork fat where it's mushy. That's because cow fat is more saturated than pork fat, which has more polyunsaturated oily fat. It's harder, it's brittle, breaks. And so you can just literally fold that into pie crusts or into a crust for a meat pie in little chunks. It's very good. It is so good. And that, because those will melt and fry the crust, and that's what makes it really crispy. So that is one of my favorite things to do with suet. Again, not tallow, just suet. And then of course, we treat this now as it was recently turned into, like, 150 years ago, a Christmas thing, but really you can do this anytime. And that there are three. Three great ways to use beef fat, and it's in all three cases. Yeah, it's in the suet, it's in the raw form, ground. Okay, and that is plum pudding, mincemeat pie, and bolognese. So, plum pudding is so delicious, and we associate it very much with Christmas, especially if you are British. But if you do want to find a traditional plum pudding recipe, but it's basically a truckload of suet, flour, sugar, a bunch of candied fruit, currants, raisins, everything you can imagine. Car- um, uh, Caramelized, what do you call it? Candied citrus peels and eggs. And I know it sounds like a crazy jumble and lots of booze, brandy. It is so delicious. And here's the thing, it's actually incredibly efficient. It's one of those things that lasts forever. So you mix all of this together, and then you form it into it's doughy because you put eggs and flour in it. You make a cannonball out of it by wrapping it and tying a cloth, and then you boil the heck out of it for a kind of a long time. And then you pull it out and let it chill, and you unwrap it, and that ball of plum pudding keeps for a very long time in your weeks and weeks in your fridge. And it never stops being delicious. It occupies this beautiful place of, man, this is savory, but it is also so sweet. Is this dessert or a meal? And the answer is yes. It is all of those things. It's so good. You eat as much of it as you can, right after it's boiled. You That's where you saturate it with brandy again, and then light it on fire so it flames, and that's really, and you sing, "Bring us some figgy pudding," right? Um, and then keep it in your fridge, and you slice it like bread and just fry the slices in butter. Literally for weeks, it keeps for weeks. So I love that, and I would love for that to be more of a staple in our home. It's one of those things, it's a little more work up front, but then you do have weeks of, lunches, breakfasts, like basically sorted because it is so rich. It is so rich and so satisfying and really good. Just, use organic Demerara unrefined sugar. Don't use castor sugar or highly refined stuff. And then it really is nutritive and delicious. And then mincemeat pie is the same thing, except you extract the flour from the mix, and you actually make a crust, right? And then you put the brandy, the suet, the ground meat. You put ground meat in it, um, the dried fruit, the candied citrus peels. You cook those forever in bubbling tallow. So you mix all the suet together, right? And then just putting all of those ingredients together in a pot and simmering it for a very long time melts all the tallow. And then you have this pot, and it's confit. It's all of the dried fruits and fat and meats confit, right? Because when it chills, you get a solid layer of tallow on top. So it's incredibly, incredibly stable. And if you can fit that pot in your fridge, it'll last even longer. And then when you want to prepare it, you warm it up and you scoop it out and you bake it in little pie crusts and little tiny crusts. And it's a little more work, but again, it does have this preservation effect where you're doing a little upfront work, and then for weeks on end, every once in a while, you're baking off little tiny mini pies that again are very savory, high protein, and sweet. And they're fatty, crazy fatty. And they're so good. They are so good. Bolognese is where you take all the fattiest scraps of your beef. If you find yourself trimming beef, which is, I would say, you can just stop doing that. Don't trim it. But if you're trimming off sheets of fat, run it through your grinder, okay? And make bolognese. Put all the ground, very fatty bits. You need some meat to be in there, right? But it can be mostly fat. Grind them, grind them, grind them. Put them into a pot. Put in a bunch of tomato paste and then a bottle of wine, bay leaves, salt, black pepper, mix it all up and simmer it for many, many hours. And again, the simmering is going to melt all that fat, render the tallow, and you will have a very savory bolognese sauce. And you can it. You can put it in jars. You can treat it just like pork rillette, which I think I mentioned the recipe for that in one of my emails recently. But it is basically rillette that is a pasta sauce, a bolognese that comes from beef. And because it's just a bunch of ground fatty cuts of beef simmering with tomatoes. You don't even have to do the tomatoes if you don't want. And salt, pepper, herbs. Definitely put some herbs in there, and red wine, strong red wine, and that just is an amazing, delicious sauce. And you would go down with a slotted spoon and fill mason jars with the meat, right? But then at the top, you leave some space, and with a ladle, you get some of the tallow that's sitting on the top of the pot, and you cap it with that, and then refrigerate, and it keeps for weeks. And when you're ready for it, you put it on top of some homemade noodles, and it's ridiculously delicious. Bolognese. There's so many other things. You can cure beef like bacon. So if you go to the Meatsmith membership and you become a member, you can find the breakfast bacon video on how to make bacon. Also, I have the bacon PDF. And if you do the exact same thing in that recipe for pork bacon with the brisket, the untrimmed, don't leave all the fat on it, with the brisket of a beef cow, you'll have beef bacon. And it's ridiculously delicious. It's very good. You could call it, you can also brine beef. You can keep beef in brines. There's lots of ways, and refrigeration. And then you take it out and simmer it and serve it up. That's traditionally what corned beef was. So that's also something we talk about in the membership, which you can check out um, to get more on that. But those are really great questions. Those are, I hope, useful tips on how to use some of that stuff. I was going to mention our classes. We have a beef class where we're going to do this. We are going to cure the brisket. We are going to also cure bresaola with some wine and salt, which is where we take the eye of round. It's so delicious. And then you can look up basturma. There's so many. We're going to cure basturma, which is more of a Middle Eastern Chaldean thing that is cured simply and then plastered with a very intense spice plaster, and then left to hang, and then just eaten in thin strips raw. So you can cure beef like you cure pork. It's very simple. That is what we cover in the beef class, which will be happening at the beginning and the end of October this year. So check it out. You can find it on our website. There's still some space in those, and we will we'll brine beef, and we will braise, pan fry, and roast beef. Of course, we will be killing a cow and cutting a cow in that time. The Family Pig 1 class is already sold out. There's still some space in the Family Pig 2 class where we do a little deeper dive into harvesting all of the offal, and that is going to be in December. But yeah, for all of your beef processing needs, check out the beef class because we're going to do the whole thing. It's pretty fun. Let's see. Rebecca Cornelius, what is the optimal aging time for hamburger meat? Right now, we are aging our beef 21 days. Nice. In hanging quarters and then processing. Our space is limited to 2 beef quarters. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I don't think there is. I don't know what's an optimal time. The trade-off with aging is this. This is how you would gauge your optimal time. It's all flavor. It's all flavor. The texture is not going to be a problem with hamburger, right? Because the grinder is pre-chewing it. It's pre-chewed meat. So tenderness, not such a big deal, which is what hanging confers. It does help the meat hold more water when it's aged. So the hamburgers will shrink less, if that makes sense, the hamburger patties, while they're being fried if they're aged a little longer, because they will hold more juiciness and water. And they literally don't have as much water because of the aging, which is the paradox of aging. It's actually got less water in it, but the water that is there is more bound in the protein, so it doesn't run out and it stays juicy. So here's how you would gauge hanging. It's totally a matter. Two things happen when you age a beef. Like I said, You have all the benefits. It gets more tender and more juicy the longer it ages, but then it also gets oxidized. And that is just the surface of the carcass goes a little rancid. And rancid does not mean putrefied, does not mean spoiled, none of that. That's not what it means. It means that it gets oxidized. The fats, the oil, some of the oils get a little oxidized, and that could make um, a slight bitter flavor that can be unpleasant to some. I actually kind of like it, so it doesn't bother me. But that's what you're judging when you're asking, what's too long to hang this? When you start to get a slightly unpleasant flavor in your ground hamburger meat or your beef in general that you don't like, just shorten the hanging time a little bit. You're starting to get into the slight bitter tang on the tongue. Um, that's how you would kind of judge hanging. But 21 days sounds awesome. You're already hanging longer than any of the processors do. They're all cutting at 14 days, if not less. So 21, great. That's awesome. Ellen asks, am I getting cream for my coffee now? Yes. Because Georgie has been producing milk very well, but not quite enough. She's coming to the end, of her cycle. So we need more. But in a family of 11, if she gives us a gallon and a half, we bring the milk, and we only milk once a day. We bring the milk, which helps with the family economy thing, big time. We bring the milk in the morning, and it is gone by 4 p.m., which means Dad doesn't get cream in his coffee, Jersey cream in his coffee the next morning. And that is a problem. So she's doing pretty good, though. She's got lots of green grass, so I've had cut cream, which has been wonderful. Tommy Duffy, good to see you. He's asked electric fencing, as just noted. If keeping the pigs in while they're in the brambles, will the fencing ground out on the proliferation of dense bush, or does one simply increase the current? Good question. So the use of electric fencing for pigs it's a bit of an art, but it's very simple. One of the chores of fencing pigs with just a couple strands of hot wire is ungrounding the fence. So that's what I try to do. And it's really, fortunately, not a matter of bushes. So it's not sticks, twigs, excuse me. Moist grass can sap some of the power of the fence, but it's not that much. And the reason is that they have made the fence chargers now. I don't think you can even get any other kind. They're low impedance. And I don't even know what that means, but I do know what the result is. The result is that it will still have a good shock even with, a twig, grass, touching it. It's so like dried twigs, woody things, woody plants, which is really what you get in a bramble. They don't really conduct a lot of electricity. They're not going to sap the fence very much at all. The only damage there is if they, kind of fall on the fence and lower it enough for pigs to walk over it, even though the pigs are highly unlikely not to do that. But moist green grass, if there is enough of it, it might be able to sap it. But even then, the low impedance fence chargers are pretty good at keeping a hot shock with that. And then the only other thing to consider is just the potency of the fence. 0.1 joules is pretty good for a lot of space, especially if it's hardwired to exterior outlet rather than a deep cycle marine battery. You can get more reliable, punchy power from that. But yeah, part of the chore is I do probably at this point, you just judge it. The thing that really grounds it out, though, is soil. And that's when the pigs are rooting right up to the line of the electric fence, which they will inevitably do, and they bury it in moist dirt, in soil. That will deaden a good portion of the fence. And so to clear that, it's a semi-regular chore. Every other day, every 3 days, once a week, I go around and unground the fence. And fortunately, my pigs are so well trained on it that even if it is grounded out or a part of the fence is just totally buried, they're never thirsty, they're never hungry, and they're well trained on the fence, so they don't like to leave. They don't like to pass that boundary once they know it's there, because they really don't like the shock. I hope that's helpful, Tommy. Ellen, silver skin and tendons go in my stock. Yes, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of beef butchery, you don't have to remove silver skin or tendons if you know how to braise. If you know how to braise, those things just add flavor to the braise. If you do remove them, put them in the stock pot with the bones. You can have a lot of tendon in the bones, a lot of silver skin, a lot of fascia in the stock pot with the bones. It'll be awesome. That's a good point, Ellen. Thank you for bringing that up. Um, Corey, I retired my pig on my own thanks to me. Awesome. Yesterday. Great. Pig is retired. Thank you. I'm butchering it alone today. Thank you, Farmstead Meatsmith. Love from New Zealand. Awesome. That's great. Well, happy harvest. I hope you eat some today and just experience the unconceivable deliciousness of fresh meat, truly fresh meat that you have harvested yourself. It's a difference in kind and not just degree from anything you've ever purchased. Okay, Ellen, I also make a combination of poultry and pork stock. While I may not grow my own animals, I try to purchase large cuts and break them down. Awesome. Let's see. I want to make sure we'll close out soon. We've gone past 4 o'clock this time. I'll just mention a few more things. Yeah. Let's see here. I'm scrolling through the chat. Do you need to have a barn for a cow? Do they need an enclosure? No, they don't. They need shade. It really depends on your climate, but usually cold, if they have a buddy, they can endure all kinds of cold because they are an amazing thermal heat generator because they have a compost heap in their gut. So they can handle cold, rain, sleet, frozen rain, all the different kinds of cold. Um, they do need shade though. Shade is good for the heat. The heat is harder on them than the cold for bovines. Holstein, yes, they do have excellent flavor. So McKinsey, our Katahdin livestock guard. Oh, your Karakachin livestock guardian dogs. Don't leave the pasture. They're amazing. That's awesome. You found a good dog, a good breed, it sounds like. That's really cool. Let's see. We noticed that we haven't gone to church as much because our animal and garden chores are taking all of our time. Oh dear. I know. It's a juggling act. We have to actively, intentionally, daily prioritize that, or it doesn't happen, like you say. And so everything happens around getting to mass. Um, and that's just the nature of a schedule. It's challenging. Meets with membership provides an oh good. This is Victoria is posting things that I should be saying, but I keep forgetting to say. Check out our membership, everybody. All of this is there, and we do this once a month on membership. We do live chats where we can do questions. We have our beef classes coming up. We even have our goose class this November, which is so fun. If you have an extraneous, despotic goose tyrannizing the barnyard, and many of us do because we get them thinking that they will guard animals, but they don't really guard them. They just tyrannize them with their puritanical laws. And they're very interesting animals, best eaten. And that is what the goose class is all about. We'll teach you how to eat your goose, how to kill it, defeather it, make cassoulet, and confit, especially. Yes, when it's dry outside, fences don't work well. That's why you need a couple grounding rods, spaced 6 feet apart, like three of them, and as deep as you can get them. But you're absolutely right. That is a challenge. And that's why I like to hardwire. Well, yeah, even if you're hardwiring it to your house, you still need the ground. But yeah. Good to see you, Tommy. Thanks for joining. Oh, you have 10 acres too, just behind getting our water, electricity for the first property. Yeah, and the infrastructure. Yeah. All right. Bolognese. Yes, thank you, Jamie. That's how you spell it. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll call it right there. Thanks for joining. It was a lot of fun. Man, we covered a lot of ground. I feel like I was talking really fast. But that was fun. So I hope you found that useful. We talked about utilizing beef. using the beautiful sweet fat of a beef cow. I mean, I love tallow. Oh man, it's so good. Tallow and potatoes is special. And tallow, make donuts. Make donuts, deep fried donuts in tallow. It's a whole new thing. Make the donuts from the sour, your sourdough starter, and deep fry them in tallow. Oh my goodness, so good, so good. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. What is it? We're in the weekend, right? Yeah, it's Saturday. And hey, maybe we'll do this again. Definitely check out the Meatsmith membership. Check out our classes. We'd love to have you out, where you can learn, where you can see this stuff happen, and you can do it, and you can actually really remember how to do it. That's what's cool about our classes, is they literally equip you to do it again, over and over, indefinitely, because ultimately all of this is well within the prowess of the home kitchen. This is the domain of the home cook, all of this stuff. All right, have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you when we do this again. Bye bye.